My name is Kwame Andres Dakulo, a person with albinism, and I work with Africa Albinism Network as the advocacy manager. Where the Africa Albinism Network is at the 85th ordinary session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. And our coming here is not only to participate, but also to try to engage and influence policies and advocacy at this level. First of all, we participated in the NGOs forum where we had a panel on persons with albinism and reparations. And also we are here to also present a statement on the same issues where issues of persons with albinism are presented before the African Commission to ensure that African Union member states take recommendations from what we are going to present and ensure the rights and welfare of persons with albinism are taken into consideration during their deliberations. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Izobo, and I am the Advocacy Program Manager at the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. And as CSBR, we are present at the 85th Ordinary Session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. For us, we're going to be presenting a statement on the African Union Team of the Year reparations. We'll also be participating in the panel session on Saturday, the 25th of October, 2025, where we get to also talk about the AU Theme of the Year on reparations, or should I say reparative justice for African descent. Today, the 22nd of October 2025, we held a side event on how we can actually mobilize African leadership for a torture-free trade treaty. And so for us at CSVL, one of the reflections, or should I say the purpose of us having, of being part of the 85th Ordinary Session, being part of the Ordinary Session each year, is to ensure that we're able to mobilize with other NGOs to serve as watchdogs to ensure that states are actually complying to the very same reason why they signed the different conventions in the first place, or even the African Charter of Human and People's Rights. And so it's also a great time for us to listen to states as they report on their human rights activities in their countries, and to ensure that whatever conventions they sign, they are implementing it, and they are not part of the violations that continue to happen in Africa. And for us, we work on conflict-related sexual violence, on transitional justice, and also on reparations. We make sure that countries who have actually signed and ratified treaties and conventions around human rights, to ensure that human rights are not violated, stick to it. Thank you so much.
الاسم الكامل ناجي مولاي الحسن، رئيس شبكة الهيئة المستقلة لحقوق الإنسان في شمال إفريقيا. إذن اليوم كمجتمع مدني نشارك في الدورة 85 للجنة الإفريقية لحقوق الإنسان والشعوب، وخلال هذه الدورة تمكنا من تقديم بلاغات شفاهية أمام اللجنة الإفريقية، وكذلك التفاعل مع المقررين الخواص. وقد تمكنا كذلك من التحدث عن أوضاع حقوق الإنسان في شمال إفريقيا، كذلك في غرب ووسط وجنوب إفريقيا، وتناولنا كذلك موضوع الفضاء المدني والانتهاكات الجسيمة لحقوق الإنسان وأثرها على المجتمع المدني. كذلك
1 2 1 2 1 2 1 1 2 mic test 1 2 1 2 mic test 1 2 1 2 1 2 mic test 1 2 1 1 2 mic test 1 2. 1 2 1 2 mic test 1 2. Watch it, I'm not ah waaw waaye watch it, am na doole de 1 2 mic test 1 2. Ekkati ko tuuti 1 2 mic test 1 2 1 2 mic 1 2 mic check 1 2. Wàccee ko 1 2 mic check 1 2. 1 2 mic check 1 2. Yokk ko tuuti waay yokkal génn bi tuuti 1 2 mic check 1 2 1 2 mic check 1 2. 1 2 mic check 1 2 ay waaye dafa laaw trop sax 1 2 mic check 1 2 mic check 1 2 waaw baax 1 2 mic check 1 2 mic check 1 2 waaw fii baax na testing 1 2 testing 1 2 mic check 1 2 testing 1 2 mic check 1 2 waaw baax na léegi baax na daa ko ne One two testing 1 2 mic check 1 2. yaa ngi dégg maanaam baaxul de 1 2 testing 1 2 1 2 maanaam baaxul da nga ko wàccee wala 1 2 testing 1 2 mic check 1 2 ba léegi de testing 1 2 mic check 1 2 waaw baax na bi baax na testing 1 2 mic check 1 2
des résolutions pays, des résolutions thématiques que nous allons soumettre à la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples pour faire face aux multiples violations des droits humains qui se passent aujourd'hui dans notre continent. Hein, on a beaucoup de problèmes de droits de l'homme, des conflits qui minent vraiment la quiétude dans les États africains et les violations vraiment qui ont pour nom la restriction de l'espace civique, la restriction des libertés et des libertés d'association, des libertés d'expression et les libertés d'opinion. Autant de violations que nous avons soulignées, sur lesquelles nous avons formulé des recommandations qui seront adressées sous forme de résolution à la session, 85e session de la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples.
My name is Shaibu Mahama, Member of Parliament from Ghana. Well, so for me, this is my first time of attending the UN, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Even though I've had some stints with them in Ghana and online, I think coming here personally has given me some more insight into the workings of the Commission. I think it's absolutely great to have the various topical issues discussed. The areas that have been covered are really areas of importance as far as the African continent is concerned. I was glad to see a whole brochure regarding witchcraft in Ghana, my own dear country. And so the highlight of the issues that are being faced by women normally, women who
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you are kindly requested to be seated. Your Excellency, delegates representing the states, distinguished delegates representing the NHRI and the civil society organizations, colleagues from the Secretariat, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to wish you a good day. We would start today, day 9 of this 85th ordinary session, and I would, without much ado, give the floor to the Secretariat to share with us today's agenda. STC, you have the floor. Thank you, Chairperson, Honorable Commissioners. It's a pleasure to share with you agenda for day 9, Wednesday, 29 October 2025. We will continue with item number 5, human rights situation in Africa, 9 to 10:30. Then we will continue with 8, devoted to the presentations of activity reports of members of the Commission. 2 reports will be presented. The report of the President of the Working Group on the death penalty, extrajudicial summary or arbitrary killings, and for disappearances in Africa. After the break, there will be the report of the Chairperson on the Committee on Protection of the Rights for People Living with HIV and those at risk. This will put an end to the public session and the Secretary. Then there will be a private session to consider and adopt the documents, especially the resolutions and the final communique of the 85th ordinary session. Chair, that is the agenda for today, Wednesday, 29 October 2025. I thank you and I hand over the floor to you. Thank you, STC. There is an echo on the loudspeakers. Can you resolve a technical glitch? In the meantime, let us resolve this technical matter. Whilst we do so, you please join us to wish happy birthday to the Honorable Vice President Hatem El Sayed. Thank you. So now we would start item number 5 of our agenda relating to the situations of human rights in Africa. According to the list given to me, I can't see any state parties, but let me ask the question, is there a state who would like to take the floor? I can't see any requests. Is there any NHRI who would like to take the floor? I can't see any, so I will call on the NGOs who are registered on the list. Some of them would intervene online. Reporters Sans Frontières. Reporters Sans Frontières, Jean Lagarde, you can take the floor. We are listening. Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Commissioners, Honorable Chairperson, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Representative Sans Frontières would like to come back on the difficulty of the exercise of journalism in Guinea. Less than 6 months after the intervention of before this commission in May, we have noted that the situation of journalists got worse. Private media have still not taken up their activities. Censure of the media is done in total silence and deprive the citizens for their right to information. Before the constitutional referendum,
vote last September, attacks on media freedom multiplied. Within a fortnight, the Higher Authority for Communication, HAC, the media regulatory body, suspended 3 media outlets. the new websites, radio stations, and web TV channels, Guinea 360, Guinea Matin, and Savary, were arbitrarily suspended. Two of them wrongly accused of manipulating information or failing to remain neutral during the referendum campaign. They were able to resume their activities after publishing letters of apology. A sword of Damocles hangs over the heads of independent media outlets, which risk seeing their activities hampered by the very body that is supposed to regulate them. Honorable commissioners, journalists are also directly affected. Again, threats. Some of them are feared for their security, and some of them have left the countries and taken measures to protect themselves. But leaving the country is not synonymous with security. In Abib Maroon Kamara is a journalist who was kidnapped by individuals that came to his house. He has not been found ever since. These acts are designed to intimidate professionals that have been exiled since July 2024 due to trust. And this is a very terrible signal for the press. No journalist is in security, and his family is also targeted. The threat on journalists is real. As I speak, Abib is still a victim of enforced disappearance, far from his family. More than 10 months now, the general administrator of 2024 was kidnapped. Armed men in military broke into his car and then took him away, and then took him to an unknown destination. Before his disappearance, these journalists actually called on the authorities on his committed. Before his enforced disappearance in July came in, we are still worried by his disappearance and his consequence on the health of journalists who's ill and needs treatment, daily treatment. We're also concerned about the consequence of press freedom, the freedom of press, expression, freedom of press in Guinea. The kidnapping and enforcement of Kamara actually is an attack on freedom of expression as well as the right to access of information. Since his kidnapping is the profession that is suffering. Such a situation is, ladies and gentlemen, this context of repression of critical voices fuels a real climate of self-censorship where journalists and critical voices no longer dare to speak out. A few weeks ago, one of them told our organization that in 25 years of experience, they'd never seen anything like it. Everyone here is afraid, even when you are just writing a simple article of profile. It is frightening and unbearable, he lamented. Honorable Commissioners, on the basis of all the above, RSF urges you to continue to call on the Guinean authorities to make a clear public statement on the fate of journalist Abib Maroon Kamara, to shed light on his abduction, and to do everything in their power to secure his release. We also ask you to call on the authorities to stop harassing critical media and to allow censored media to resume their activities. Private media must be able to operate without restriction and journalists without fear of reprisals. We await the response of the transnational authorities. Thank you for your kind attention.
The Commission would like to thank you and has taken due note of your statement. Let me now suspend temporarily the consideration of item number 5. Please allow me to go to item number 8 and to give the floor to Honorable Commissioner Lita Musi Ogana for the presentations of her report. She has another commitment, and so she has to make the presentation now. Commissioner, you have the floor to present your report. We will come back to the human rights immediately thereafter.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the floor. And good morning, Chair, Commissioners, and delegates present. I am pleased to take the floor to present my report, my intersessional report on the in my capacity as the chairperson on the Committee on the Protection of the Rights of People living with HIV and AIDS, those at risk, vulnerable, and affected by HIV in Africa, and also in my capacity as a country rapporteur for the Arab Republic of Egypt, the Republic of the Gambia, Republic of Sierra Leone, the State of Eritrea, and Kingdom of Eswatini. Chair, this report is submitted under Rule 25.3 and Rule 64 of the 2020 Rules of Procedure of the Commission. It provides an overview on the activities undertaken during the intersessional period between the 84th and 85th ordinary sessions of the Commission. I am pleased to say that this report is divided into 6 parts. Part 1 is activities of the Committee on the Protection of the Rights of People living with HIV/AIDS, those at risk, vulnerable, and affected by HIV and AIDS in Africa. Part 2 are my activities in country monitoring efforts in Egypt, the Gambia, Sierra Leone, Eritrea, and Eswatini. Part 3 is intersessional activities conducted in my capacity as a member of the Commission. 4 is working group on specific issues, recommendations, and conclusions. With regard to part 1, as I mentioned yesterday, I think we have a problem. As I mentioned yesterday, the Commission facilitated the Forum of African Traditional Leaders, which was hosted by His Majesty the King of Eswatini between 5th and 9th September 2025 in Bambane.
Commissaire, s'il vous plaît, je crois qu'on a des problèmes avec le son. J'appelle les techniciens. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous aider à régler cela? D'accord.
Is it okay now? Are we ready?
Still now, boy. Still now, it's not coming. Still now. The feedback is still coming. Do you copy? Yeah, is it low no banda? Yeah, because they are saying if we can cancel all the silent speakers.
Should turn off our mic?
No, it's not a problem. This is from the speakers. It's not from the mic. Testing, 1, 2.
Mesdames et messieurs, merci pour votre patience et votre compréhension. Je crois que le
Gentlemen, thank you for your patience. The problem has now been resolved, so Commissioner, you may proceed with your presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was just recalling the fact that the Commission facilitated the Traditional Leaders Forum held in the Kingdom of Eswatini under the patronage of His Excellency, His Majesty King Mswati III. At that forum, the Commission successfully convened a roundtable on HIV and AIDS, which was addressed by the UN Country Director in the Kingdom of Eswatini and the head of HIV and AIDS Prevention Council in the Kingdom. This was very well received by the traditional leaders, who went ahead to form a network for traditional leaders to support people living with HIV and AIDS. Honorable Chairperson, on September 29th, I was able to follow up on our efforts to have the app on HIV and AIDS operationalized. Is it okay? In this regard, you can hear me, even with the echo? Okay. So during the intercession period, efforts continued towards the implementation of proposal of the committee to create and launch a digitized software, which we call the app, which is a community-based program aimed to address overwhelming needs of people living with HIV and AIDS and provides home-based care, among others. The proposed software application initiative will deliver a patient-driven HIV management program and is designed to meet the entire spectrum of needs of people living with HIV and AIDS. In this regard, I had an initial meeting with Safaricom team in Kenya on 2nd October to motivate them and seek their support to the Commission to start the process of mobilizing partners to fund the development of the app. The meeting agreed to convene a roundtable for HIV and AIDS in Nairobi in the first quarter of 2026. This was preceded by a meeting held at the margins of the Ghana Continental Workshop for NGOs, in which I made a follow-up meeting on the high-level panel on HIV and AIDS on the app, which had been held in New York, USA on 14th March at the margins of the CSW. This was through the collaboration with IPAS Africa Alliance. The follow-up meeting that was held on 26th of September 2025 in Accra agreed to co-finance the meeting on the app in the first quarter of 2026. With regard to recent developments on the development of an HIV/AIDS vaccine, the committee noted that the Republic of South Africa is preparing to roll out a long-acting injectable drug, lenacapavir, as part of the national HIV/AIDS strategy, making a significant milestone in the global fight against HIV. Reports indicate that this injectable, which is administered twice a year has demonstrated remarkable efficacy in preventing HIV/AIDS infections, particularly among populations with high risk, such as adolescents, girls, and young women. The planned rollout follows successful clinical trials, regulatory approvals processes, positioning South Africa as one of the first countries in the world to carry this injectable on scale. However, the use of the phrase vaccine instead of an injectable has raised concerns considering the frequency at which it has to be administered, which is every 6 months. Ongoing plans on the World Day 2025 on 1st of December 2025. The Commission, through its Committee on the Protection of People Living with HIV and AIDS, is initiating, with the collaboration with UNAIDS Country Office in Eswatini, to commemorate the 2025 World Days by spotlighting the Kingdom of Eswatini, which to date has got the highest prevalence of HIV/AIDS in the world. This is despite the fact that the population is small, but in terms of prevalence, it ranks the highest. With regard to the Republic of the Gambia, the Commission joined the Commission and the my mandate and that of the mandate of Rapporteur for Women co-signed a joint letter of commendation addressed to His Excellency President Adama Barrow to congratulate the government of Gambia for signing the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women. I also, on the Gambia, wrote a letter of urgent appeal to the government of the Gambia on the death of the one-old baby following female genital mutilation. This was covered also under cultural practices in my report on indigenous people and minorities. In the Gambia, on the 19th of September 2025, in my capacity as country rapporteur, I received a letter from a coalition of Gambian civil society organizations and lawyers raising serious concerns regarding the arbitrary arrest and use of excessive force against peaceful protesters and journalists by security forces by the Republic of Gambia. Citing incidents on the 15th of September, 22nd, and 25th. These incidences were reported, but before we could take any action, the arrests and individuals were released, and so we did not have to write any letters of appeal. With regard to the Republic of Sierra Leone, as country rapporteur for human rights in the country, I remain concerned by the persistent challenges affecting the right to health, a safe environment, and socio-economic well-being. The ongoing public health crisis caused by the widespread abuse of synthetic drug, Kush, has devastated youth populations and exposed weaknesses in access to treatment, rehabilitation, and social protection. At the same time, reports indicate that environmental degradation driven by illegal mining, deforestation, and land grabbing has displaced rural communities and left populations exposed to land and ecosystem damage and undermining their right to a healthy environment. With regard to the state of Eritrea, as a country rapporteur for human rights situations in the state of Eritrea, I commend the government for the release of 2 Jehovah's Witnesses, an elderly and a 10th pregnant lady following the arrest, together with their members of Jehovah's Witnesses arrested on the 27th September 2024 by the National Security Forces of the state of Eritrea, when they assembled for a peaceful congregation to worship and study the Bible. I continue to call on His Excellency's government to release the remaining Jehovah's Witnesses, estimated to be about 64, who are allegedly still in detention without charge, trial, or indeterminate sentence in various facilities such as Maizerwa, Adi Abelo, and Bukushu prison camps. I call on the government to guarantee the enjoyment of the rights guaranteed by the Charter, particularly Article 8, which states that freedom of conscience and profession and free practice of religion shall be guaranteed. With regard to the Kingdom of Eswatini, I'm pleased to report that from 14 to 20th July 2025, the Commission conducted a promotion mission to the Kingdom of Eswatini, in which I took part in as country rapporteur for human rights in the kingdom. This mission was undertaken jointly accompanied by the then chairperson of the Commission, Commissioner Remengoi Lumbu, and the Honorable Maria Luis Abomo and Secretariat team. The Commission engaged the government officials, civil society, and international partners to assess the human situation in the kingdom. The Commission took note of the dual governance structure in the kingdom, in which the traditional system of governance runs alongside the modern governance system under an African monarchy. At the end of the mission, the Commission commended Eswatini for notable progress, including ratification of key human rights instruments, adoption of different policies, legislative reforms, improved welfare of women and children, and improved conditions in correctional facilities. It also, however, identified challenges such as limited civil society engagement, gaps in legal protections for human rights defenders, and concerns under freedom of expression and civic space. I commend the Kingdom of Eswatini for its initiative in inviting the Commission to undertake a promotion mission. This gesture reflects a commendable commitment to openness and transparency and a willingness to facilitate an objective assessment of human rights situations in the kingdom, followed by the implementation of Commission's recommendations. Under Part 3, this is the activities conducted in my capacity as a member of the Commission. The Commission had a complementarity retreat with the African Court, which took place on 2nd and 3rd of June 2025. This retreat was co-chaired by Honorable Justice Modibo and Honorable Lumbu, which was aimed at strengthening the complementarity and review processes of the 2023-2025 complementarity roadmap. I also participated in the UNEP expert consultation on human rights environment in Kenya between 12 and 13 July 2025 and made a presentation. I too participated in a private ordinary session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights between 21st and 3rd of July 2025, which was held virtually. This was followed by an extraordinary session of the Commission on Human and People's Rights, which was held on the 19th September, and which I also participated virtually. I also participated in a COSOC Rights of Women and Extractive Industries meeting 25th to 26th September 2025, and I chaired, moderated a panel on women in the extractive industries, which explored human rights implications of extractive activities on women's livelihoods, rights, and socio-economic empowerment. As I mentioned yesterday, I had a quasi-official visit to California in the month of October, and the most important thing that I would like to highlight on this is that I had a breakfast meeting with the team that is organizing the 5th anniversary of the Roots book and film, which was featuring the Kunta Kinte story, descendant of the Gambia during the slave trade. This was a very important breakfast because the person who acted, Kunta Kinte then, at the age of 18, will be visiting the Gambia next year to commemorate the 50th anniversary, and the team approached me in my capacity as the country rapporteur to see if we could partner in the organizing of the comeback mission and celebration of Roots at 50. In this connection, Mr. LeVar Burton, who played Kunta Kinte in the ABC miniseries Roots to the Gambia, will be coming, and there are certain requests around ancestry which we would like to discuss with the government of the Gambia. For example, granting such a person citizenship would be a very good sign, considering that it took to put Gambia on the global map by putting his life to represent a Gambian when he was 18 then. Now he is 68, and his trip to Gambia is a very emotional trip, and I encourage the Republic of Gambia to consider that wish. On other specific issues, I would like also to raise in my commission as country rapporteur the issue of the host agreement we have with the Gambia on the, on the housing of the commission. The issue here is to call for the implementation of various decisions of the Executive Council, urging the government of the Republic of Gambia to provide permanent headquarters for the commission, including decision on 29th, 13th, and 31st activity reports of the Commission on Human Rights. In these reports, the Commission expressed its gratitude to the government of the Gambia for kindly hosting ACPHR for the past 25 years and urges it to provide a permanent headquarters to the Commission in conformity with the criteria of hosting of AU organs adopted in Ceuta, Libya in 2005. On recommendations, I have a couple of recommendations. The first one is strengthening HIV/AIDS prevention to accelerate the adoption and equitable rollout of innovative HIV/AIDS prevention treatment tools, support of digital health solutions such as the app we are proposing, advancing legal and policy reforms through ratification, domestication, and effective implementation of key human rights instruments, including the Maputo Protocol, the protection of civic space and human rights defenders, the address of socio-economic and environmental rights, promotion of freedom of religion and belief, enhancement of cooperation with the Commission. With regard to the civil society, we have recommendations including strengthening monitoring and advocacy, fostering partnership on HIV/AIDS and digital health, promoting awareness and legal literacy, and engaging in constructive dialogue as well as enhancing protection networks. In conclusion, Chairperson, the reporting period reflects substantial progress in advancing rights, public health, and institutional collaboration across Africa. The activities taken in my capacity as country rapporteur of the 5 countries and as a member of the Commission reaffirm the Commission's commitment to ensuring that human rights principles underpin the continent's effort to end HIV and AIDS, promote gender equality, and protect civil, civic, and environmental rights. While notable gains have been recorded, such as South Africa's leadership in HIV/AIDS prevention, the Gambia's signature to the convention, and Eswatini's openness to ACPHR's engagement, persistent challenges remain in some parts of the continent. These include civic space restrictions, socioeconomic vulnerabilities, environmental degradation, and gaps in access to health and justice. Sustained commitment from states, civil society, and development partners remain critical to achieving the African Charter vision of dignity, equality, and justice for all. The Commission, through a special mechanism such as the Committee on Protection of the Rights of People Living with HIV and AIDS, and through the Working Group on Indigenous people and minorities, will continue to provide guidance, monitor compliance, and support transformative action towards a full realization of human rights on the continent. Chair, I submit, and thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Commissioner. I'd like now to open the floor for discussions on this report to enable delegates to interact with you. I'd like to start with member states. Is there any member state that would like to take the floor? I'll give the floor to Eritrea. Eritrea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor. Excellencies, colleagues, and distinguished participants, a very good morning to all of us. All protocols duly observed. My delegation acknowledges and commends the report presented by Commissioner Lita Musimi-Ogana and her commitment to the promotion of human rights. I am taking the floor to exercise my delegation's right of reply in regard to the parts of the report presented by Honorable Commissioner Lita on Eritrea. This is specifically related to freedom of religion. Eritrea respects practice of religion, free practice of religion, and fully subscribes to the principle of religious freedom. In Eritrea, Christianity and Islam has coexisted peacefully for more than 1,000 years. It is in part to this religious harmony that Eritrea enjoys peace and stability in a region being tormented by religious strife and conflicts. In this case, I once again confirm that no one in Eritrea is imprisoned for their religious beliefs. But if arrested, I reiterate, if arrested, it is not because of their faith, but for violating the law under the cover of religion. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
The Commission would like to thank you, Your Excellency. Any further request of the floor from a state, member state? I can't see any, so I now turn to the National Commission on National Human Rights Commission. I can't see any. And now it's the turn of the NGOs. Any NGO would like to take the floor? I can't see any other. Can't see any. Honorable Commissioners, I'd like to return the floor to you for your concluding remarks.
And I wish to thank the delegation from the state of Eritrea for his comments. We take note of your comments and your right of reply, and would like to have the written statement. I tried to listen, but the communication was not very audible. But the little I had, I take note, and request you to please submit to us the submission so that we can pay greater attention to it. Otherwise, Chair, I would like to thank you for the floor and seek to be excused to be able to attend another commission event that I've been assigned to. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Commissioner. I take note of the presentation of your second report in your capacity as chairperson of the Committee on the Protection of the Rights of People living with HIV and people with vulnerable risk affected by HIV. I'd like to congratulate you and allow you to withdraw and attend to your commitments. This brings an end to this presentation of the report. Now we're going to reopen item 5 on our agenda, devoted to the human rights situations in Africa. I started by calling on the NGOs that had registered. We're going to continue, and I'm going to gradually give the floor until the time that has been allotted for. So the Center for Resources and Transformation, you have the floor, please. Yeah, they can take the floor. Yeah. Before that happens, allow me to give the floor to the Gambia that requested for it, and then thereafter we'll come back to you, to the list of NGOs.
Honorable Commissioner, I just want to buttress on the Gambia's commitment in the establishment of a structure for the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. In November 2017, under the leadership of the President, Adama Barrow, announced that there are preparations that are ongoing on the advanced stage for the country to build a new secretariat. And a task force has already been established for the construction and the raising of funds for the establishment of this new structure. And this new building is intended to provide a better facilities to serve the African Commission on Human and People's Rights mandate, as well as which include the promotion of human rights and the protection of human rights in the Gambia. I thank you, Honorable Commission.
Merci beaucoup, honorable délégué de la République de Gambie. La Commission se réjouit de cet engagement renouvelé et vous remercie. Je reviens à présent sur la liste des demandes de parole.
The list of requests for the floor. Well, Kenya, you have the floor, please.
Commissioners, good morning. This delegation would wish to exercise a right of reply with regards to statements made in this session of the situation of human rights in Africa, in particular on women's rights. Chairperson, the government of Kenya acknowledges and notes the observations by the Federation of Female Lawyers and IPA's Africa Alliance on efforts to advance women's rights in Kenya. However, this delegation makes the following clarification in exercise of the right to reply. While acknowledging that there is more ground to be covered, the promotion of women's participation in political and public life remains central to Kenya's realization of civil and political rights under the Charter and the Maputo Protocol. The government acknowledges that recognizes that equitable participation of women and men in decision-making is vital for inclusive governance, accountability, and sustainable development. In the Supreme Court advisory opinion, in the gender representation in the National Assembly and the Senate, the court addressed the two-thirds gender principle in parliamentary representation and stated that the principle would be progressively realized. While the constitutional threshold is yet to be fully met, Kenya is steadily advancing toward this goal through concrete legal, institutional, and policy interventions demonstrating measurable progress in implementing the rule. On legal and institutional framework, Kenya's framework on gender equality and participation is grounded in Article 27 and 81B of the Constitution, which guarantee equality, non-discrimination, and the principle that no more than 2/3 of members of elective and appointive bodies shall be of the same gender. To advance this commitment, the Office of the Women's Rights Advisor was established in November 2022 under the Executive Office of the President, following a pledge made by His Excellency the President in June 2022. This office advises on policy and legal measures to promote women's rights and coordinates implementation of the Women's Charter, which mainstreams the women's agenda across all sectors. A multi-sectoral working group was constituted in 2023 to develop legislative framework for implementing the 2/3 gender principle as required under the Constitution. In addition, there are now standard operating procedures on prevention and response to gender-based violence and standard operating guidelines on gender-based violence case management. In terms of governance and politics, Kenya has recorded measurable progress in promoting women's participation in decision-making across all branches of government. In the judiciary, women now constitute 42% of judicial officers. And for the first time in Kenya's history, the Chief Justice, the Deputy Chief Justice, the Attorney General, and the Principal Secretary, State Department for Justice, Constitutional Affairs, and Human Rights are all women. The National Council on Administrative Justice annual report of 2023-2024, which is the latest, puts the overall composition of employees in the judiciary at 50-50, with 3,427 women and 3,459 male. With regards to the executive, women representation among cabinet secretaries rose to 30% in 2017, 39% in 2024, and 31% 2025. Principal secretaries are 18, representing 30.5%. The same is reflected in county governments. The legislature is yet to achieve the 30%, but progress has been made. As I come to conclude, in the private sector, women hold 36% of corporate board positions, surpassing the global average of 23%, and 21% of board chairpersonships. Chairperson, the Kenya Women Parliamentary Association and the Kenya Women Senators Association continue to strengthen gender-responsive legislation, mentorship, and advocacy. Under the Group G7 strategy, launched by the 7 elected women governors, seeks to increase women governors to 24 in the elections of 2027, reflecting sustained political mobilization and leadership growth. It is no wonder then that Kenya received the Africa Gender Award 2022 from the Gender is My Agenda campaign in recognition of its leadership in implementing the African Union Solemn Declaration on Gender Equality in Africa. As I come to conclude, Chairperson, the government has institutionalized gender-responsive budgeting to ensure that public financial systems advance gender equality outcomes. Women participation is reinforced by measures that safeguard rights and improve access to justice. The judiciary established 12 specialized gender-based violence courts and developed the gender-based violence strategy to enhance case management and survivor protection. National and county level measures to combat gender-based violence include implementation of the Prevention Against Domestic Violence Act, the National Policy for the Eradication of Female Genital Mutilation, and the gender-based violence policies in several counties. Kenya has also strengthened protection against technology-facilitated gender-based violence through the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act 2018. Finally, in January 2025, the government established a multi-agency presidential task force on gender-based violence and femicide to comprehensively examine the rising cases of violence against women and girls. Chairperson of the Commission, the government remains committed to strengthening the Office of the Women's Rights Advisor to coordinate the implementation of the Women's Charter, scaling up gender-responsive budgeting, partnering with women-led organizations and civil society to enhance women's participation in governance and public life. Kenya therefore acknowledges that achieving full gender equality requires sustained political will, adequate resources, and transformation of entrenched social norms. The state remains committed to consolidating progress and fulfilling its obligations under the African Charter on Human and People's Rights and the Maputo Protocol. Thank you, Chair.
Excellency, the Commission receive your reply and takes note of the clarifications you have made and acknowledges receipt. Thank you. I'd like to ensure that there's no further request for the floor in the hall before we return online for other NGO statements. I can't see any hand. I'm going to give the floor to the Center of the Resource for Transformation.
Honorable Chairperson, Commissioners, State Party representatives, fellow civil society representatives. My name is Letshabisa Malebanye and I'm from the Transformation Resource Center. This statement addresses seven critical human rights concerns in Lesotho. Taught ill treatment, freedom of expression, LGBTI+ violence, failures in international reporting, healthcare access, constitutional procedural violations, and positive government achievements. Allow me to start with the first one, which is torture and ill treatment. Outstanding investigations remain into multiple torture incidents. In 2019, police unlawfully detained and tortured Kau community residents in Botabote. One victim, Poshwani Moloi, died from these injuries. And recently, another victim's death was linked to these operations. In May 2022, police and Defense Force tortured 46 Diseleng community members at Halujuni. The 2023 Ombudsman report exposed severe abuses at Maseru Correctional Center, including torture, beatings, and denial of medical care with officer cover-ups. We therefore call for immediate independent investigations, perpetrator accountability, and state reparations to victims. Moving on to the second one, which is freedom of speech and expression. The environment for free expression continues to deteriorate. On the 29th August 2025, investigative journalist Mohalenyane Phakela was unlawfully detained by DCO on false impersonation charges, held overnight despite presenting evidence of innocence, and only released when charges were dropped. The 2023 killing of journalist Radikonelo Joki and ongoing harassment create a climate of fear and self-censorship. Lesotho must publicly reaffirm protection of these rights, ensure safe civic space, and sanction violators. Moving on to the third one, which is violence against LGBTI+ persons. The brutal murders of Butadashias Mapala, a transgender woman, and Gambelo Sisedi, a gay man, highlight urgent protection failures for vulnerable communities. We urge the Commission to call for prompt, impartial investigations, perpetrator accountability, and protection mechanisms for LGBTI+ LGBTIQ plus persons. Moving on to the fourth one, which is failure to report at international forums. Lesotho nationals face denial of health services and severe mobility constraints in South Africa due to immigration policies. At the third UN conference on landlocked developing countries, the Minister of Foreign Affairs failed to raise this life-threatening challenges. Lesotho must strengthen reporting mechanisms to disclose all significant human rights challenges at international forums. Moving on to the fifth one, which is healthcare for rare diseases. In 2024, Queen Mamohato Memorial Hospital staff dismissed one Albert Shanduka's request for hemophilia testing for his child, despite family history and symptoms, calling it a waste of resources. This caused significant diagnostic delays. We recommend improved training on rare diseases and strengthened healthcare infrastructure for early diagnosis. Moving on to the last but not least, constitutional reform procedural violations. The 10th Amendment to the Constitution Act 2025 was passed amid controversy. Critics, including Section 2 Lesotho and the Law Society of Lesotho, argue that it violated Section 85. Amendment procedures lacked required majorities and referendum and bypassed adequate public participation and transparency. Moving on to the last one, which is the government achievements. Lesotho has made significant progress, launching the Persons with Disabilities Advisory Council in 2025 and re-established the Human Rights Commission in August 2025 under Act 2 of 2025 to comply with Paris principles, demonstrating strengthened commitment to human rights. Thank you for your attention.
The Commission would like to thank you. I now give the floor to the National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders of Kenya, Wallace Nderu. You have the floor, Wallace Nderu.
Person and distinguished delegates, good morning. Honorable Chairperson, National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders is deeply honored to present this statement highlighting the concerns between April and October 2025. Kenya's constitution remains one of progress in Africa. It enshrines a strong Bill of Rights and affirms our commitment to regional and national human rights standards. Yet, in reality, human rights defenders continue to pay the price for speaking truth to power. Throughout this period, human rights defenders and outspoken activists faced intimidation, violence, and criminalization. In June 2025, 3 human rights defenders were detained for 5 days on fabricated charges and were released on punitive bail of Kenyans 200,000 before being released without any charges. On 2nd June 2025, software developer and human rights defender Rose Njeri was arrested after designing a digital
platform to silence and restrict civic poor management of the economic crisis and the lack of facilities in various areas like education and health affect the population. We therefore request the Commission in the preparation of its concluding remarks to take into account the alternative reports and recommend the release of all persons detained arbitrarily and asylum seekers, and to ensure the independence of the judiciary in the 2 countries. Apart from this consideration, relations concerning the conflicts in the Sahel and the DRC requires greater attention. In Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, the Islamic groups are serious abuses against civilians in the context of restriction of civic space. In the eastern part of DRC, the government forces and the M23 combatants and other armed groups executions and rape and enforced disappearances and violence. So the credibility of this commission lies not only in its capacity to document forms of violence, and that its decision, the perpetrators are tried through the concrete measures of the contest concerned. Thank you. The Commission would like to thank you. Takes good note of your statement. Now I'll come back to the statement of the National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders of Kenya. Are you online? Coalition of Human Rights Defenders of Kenya. Mr. Wallace Nderu, you have the floor. Wallace.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Commissioners, distinguished guests, Gates, Honorable Chairperson, the National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders is deeply honored to address the Commission on the state of human rights and situation of human rights defenders in Kenya in October 2025. Kenya's constitution remains one of the progressive in Africa. It enshrines rights and affirms commitment to regional and international human rights standards. Yet, in reality, human rights defenders continue to pay a heavy price for truth to power. Throughout this period, human rights defenders and outspoken activists have faced intimidation and criminalization. In June 2025, 3 human rights were detained for 5 days on fabricated charges and later released punitive bail of 200,000 and later being released on charges. On 2nd July, software developer and human rights defender was arrested after designing a digital platform to help citizens engage the post-2020. She was detained for 2 hours without speech and later released without any charge. We continue to the abuse and weaponization of existing rules aimed at silencing critics of human rights violations and abuses in the country, particularly anti-terror-related rules such as the Terrorism Act 2012. Across the region, thus making the East Africa Community region human rights defenders. On 19th May 2025, human rights defenders from Kenya and Uganda, namely Boniface Twahire, were arrested, held incommunicado, and tortured by the authorities before later being released with no regret. On 1st October 2025, 2 Kenyan human rights defenders, Bob Njagi, Nicholas Oyo, allegedly abducted and disappeared while in the Republic of Uganda. It is now more than 20 days since their disappearance, their whereabouts, and the Ugandan authorities continue to claim they do not have in custody. Security agencies use excessive and lethal force against peaceful demonstrators. In the protests of June and July this year, the National Commission on Human Rights reported more than 50 people were killed, others were injured, and cases of sexual violence were reported during the protest. Yet, justice remained. At the same time, Kenya's space is shrinking. In June 2025, media houses ordered to stop live coverage of protests and of license suspension. The High Court later overturned, but it revealed how fragile our freedoms have become. Proposed amendments to the Public Order Act now threaten to make peaceful assembly almost impossible. Today, ranked obstructed by civic monitor, our reflection of how limited space for dissent has become. Gender-based violence continue to rise in 2024 alone, 70 women were killed, yet prosecutions require and activities thrives. Urgently need a specific law, homicide, and full implementation of the recommendations by the GBV and established by the present agreement. LGBTQ minorities in Kenya. This relentless attack, there is an increase in anti-LGBTQ movement operating as pro-family advocates, where they continue to advocate without state protection. An already oppressed and marginalized community will continue to suffer grave harm. The government's continued refusal to register national gay and lesbian commission, despite clear shows persistent institutions.
Monsieur Nderou, veuillez conclure s'il vous plaît. Le temps est épuisé et la qualité du son ne permet pas aux interprètes de faire correctement le travail.
In conclusion, the National Coalition for Human Rights Defenders urges the African Commission to urge the Kenyan government and act legislation to protect human rights defenders, investigate and prosecute violations, including killing and abduction, during the protests in the country this year and last year. Respect freedoms of expression, association, and peaceful assembly, and not to enact regressive laws. Criminalize femicide, imposed disappearances, and extrajudicial killing, and the misuse of women and groups, including LGBT persons, to ensure the safety of the two human rights defenders, Bob Jangi and Nicholas Thank you very much for the opportunity to address the committee.
The Commission would like to thank you. I now give the floor to the Center for Reproductive Rights. Center for Reproductive Rights.
Is honored to make this statement, highlighting the human rights situation of women and girls in Africa in regards to the realization of their sexual and reproductive health and rights. Maternal health in Africa is not only by medical complications, but also by systemic violations of women and girls' rights within health systems. This results to what is commonly referred to as obstetric violence and includes verbal abuse, neglect, non-consensual medical procedures, denial of relief, unnecessary interventions, degrading treatment during labor and childbirth, as well as detention in hospitals for inability to pay fees. These practices are most acutely experienced by women and girls in rural and marginalized communities and those living with disabilities. The Center for Reproductive Rights takes this opportunity to commend the Commission for its important resolution number 625 of 2025 that was made during the 82nd private session of condemning all forms of obstetric violence and tasking the relevant special mechanisms to develop guidelines on the elimination of obstetric violence and the promotion of maternal health in Africa. In this vein, we urge the Commission to ensure that the guidelines embody the lived experiences of women and girls, provide clear normative standards for respectful maternity care, establish accountability mechanisms for redress and monitoring, guidance on prohibiting the detention of women and girls in healthcare facilities, and emphasize the importance of training health professionals in a rights-based, consent-driven, and dignified manner. In addition, we urge the Commission to put in place standards that require African states to strengthen their health systems through adequate domestic financing that would improve maternal health care service delivery. The Center would also like to draw the attention of the Commission to the profound challenges that young women and adolescents are facing in accessing sexual and reproductive health and rights in information as well as services within the continent. The age of consent to access sexual and reproductive health information remains pegged on the national ages of consent, and access is dependent on third parties' consent from parents or guardians, despite guidance from regional international human rights bodies that adolescents and young women should access these services based on their evolving capacities to prevent situations where they shy away from seeking health services. This has contributed to high rates of teenage pregnancies with devastating consequences, including interrupted education, heightened poverty, and serious health risks, which include increasing rates of new infections in HIV. In this regard, we laud the Republic of Rwanda for enacting the law regulating healthcare services. This new law introduces key reforms that lower the age of access to health services, including sexual and reproductive health services without parental consent, from 18 to 15 years. And we urge the governments of other countries, such as Kenya, Malawi, Uganda, and Tanzania, to review their legislative frameworks, repeal the discriminatory consent provisions, and expand access to all adolescents to ensure confidential services that respond to the lived realities of users. A critical component for sexual and reproductive health for young women and adolescents is the provision of comprehensive sexuality education, which, when scientifically accurate and age-appropriate, has proven to reduce unintended and early pregnancies and improve health-seeking and health-protective behavior among this demographic group. Yet across the continent, CSC remains contested, underfunded, and inconsistently delivered. We call upon all states to integrate CSC for both in and out of school adolescents, as failure to do so only violates their health rights, but also violates their rights to education, dignity, and equality as provided for under the African Charter and the Maputo Protocol. We thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Commissioners, for your attention and for the opportunity to present this statement.
The Commission would like to thank you. And now I invite the Friends of Angola. And you, Friends of Angola. I call on the Legal Center for Human Rights. I call on the Global Alliance for Health and Rights. It is the last request for the floor. I will close the list. If there is no request for the floor, then I'll close this session then. Yes, I can see Lesotho raising there. You can have the floor. You can take the floor.
Delegates of member states, representatives of the national human rights institutions, as well as the representatives of the civil society organizations. My delegation would like to exercise its right to reply to the concerns raised by the Transformation Resource Center, which is a civil society organization operating within the Kingdom of Lesotho. The Transformation Resource Center raised about 5 concerns in relation to the protection of human rights in Lesotho. Firstly, regarding the brutality against the persons of the LGBTQI community. The Kingdom of Lesotho is currently taking efforts in ensuring that it promotes the right of persons of the LGBTIQ+ community. I would like to bring to the attention of this forum that during its review, 4th cycle review of the Universal Periodic Review, Lesotho has accepted about 4 recommendations which spoke to the enhancing protection of the LGBTIQ+ community. In relation to that, the Kingdom of Lesotho, through the Ministry of Justice and Law, has, in collaboration with the organizations of the LGBTQI+ community, as well as the international partner organizations, drafted the work plan for the speedy implementation of such recommendations. In particular, in collaboration with the civil society of the organizations of persons with disabilities, specifically People's Matrix Association, the Ministry of Justice is currently holding countrywide campaigns raising awareness about the LGBTQI+ community, as well as promoting their inclusion within their communities and their families. In addition to that, the Ministry of Justice and Law is also holding workshops for the civil society, workshops for the line ministries, whereby the line ministries are being educated about the LGBTQI+ community. In addition to that, still in partnership with the People's Metrics Association and with the Human Dignity Trust, the Kingdom of Lesotho, through the Ministry of Justice and through the Ministries of Law and Justice, is currently working on strengthening our criminal laws in order to ensure that we legislate on the hate crimes and hate speech, and the LGBTQI+ community shall be among the protected groups. Moving to the right to health, I wish to share with this forum that the Kingdom of Lesotho is taking necessary measures to strengthen its healthcare system in order to ensure that it is people-centered and responds to the needs of individuals. That being the case, this year in August 2025, through the Ministry of Health, the Kingdom of Lesotho has launched the Digital Health Strategy, whose aim is to strengthen the healthcare system through using digital technology. It also aims to improve the governance of the health sector, coordination, and to improve service delivery generally. Moving on to police brutality and the acts of brutality committed by the members of the Lesotho Mounted Police Service as well as the Lesotho Defence Force, I wish to share with this platform that in November 2023, through the Ministry of Justice and of Law and Justice, in partnership with the Commonwealth Secretariat, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and the Committee Against Torture Initiative, the Ministry of Justice and Law held the bilateral meetings with these two institutions, as a result of which it was clear that they needed capacity building in relation to human rights. As a result, the preparations are underway to hold capacity buildings for these two institutions. In addition to that, I wish to share also with this platform that with the support of the OCHR, Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the Lesotho Mounted Police has developed a human rights manual, which is used to mainstream human rights within the LMPS service. And the same institution also holds weekly countrywide human rights trainings for the in-service police members. In addition to that, I also wish to share with this platform that the human rights education has also been incorporated as part of the training at the Lesotho Police Training College, with the aim of improving the respect of human rights within the service of the LMPS. Moving on to freedom of expression, I wish to share with this platform that the Kingdom of Lesotho remains committed to ensuring access to right to freedom of expression and access to information within its territory, as per the provisions of the African Charter and the provisions of the Constitution. As a result, the preparations are underway to legislate on access to information bill. With regards the concerns raised concerning the media journalists, I wish to share with these platforms that proper investigations are being in place and the perpetrators or the suspects of the death of have been arrested and they are facing court proceedings. Lastly, I wish to respond to the concerns in relation to the 10th amendment of the Constitution. It is the concern raised by the Transformation Resource Center that the 10th Amendment of the Constitution was passed unconstitutionally. Chairperson, I wish to share with this platform that the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which was passed by the Parliament of Lesotho in August this year, was passed in observation and in line with the prescriptions of the law. As a result, there is a case before the High Court where this concern has been raised, and the government of Lesotho is opposing the matter. In conclusion, I wish to reiterate that the Kingdom of Lesotho remains highly committed to implement on progressive basis and speedily so the provisions of the African Charter, the provisions of the protocols of the African Charter, as well as other international instruments applicable to it, and also the provisions of the Constitution in as far as human rights are concerned. I thank you.
The Commission has received the response of Lesotho, and we thank you. I will now hand over the floor to Kenya.
To the statement made by the Coalition of Human Rights Defenders of Kenya, and in particular reiterate with respect to Rose Njeri that we emphasize our statement before this commission that Rose Njeri was presented before the impartial, independent judiciary and released. The government of Kenya did respond to the communication from the Commission, and as such, Rose Njeri remains a free citizen of Kenya. Also in respect to the statement that the Public Order Act is undergoing amendment to shrink civic space, it is the statement of this delegation that the mooted proposal to amend the Public Order Act was a private member's bill. This was not a government bill, and in any event, that private member has since withdrawn the proposal. With regards to the statement that high or exorbitant bail terms were imposed, again, it is the statement of this delegation that cases presented before the court are handled with the discretion of the presiding officers and impartial and independent judiciary, where arrested and prosecuted persons are displeased with the terms. Those are again, they present challenges before the court. Those challenges are heard and adjudicated depending on the facts of the case. We reiterate our statement before this August Assembly that in the last 2 years we have faced unprecedented cases of violent protests which have resulted in arson, destruction of public infrastructure, which have necessitated the law to be applied in accordance with the Constitution and the bounds of the prevailing criminal procedure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Commission has taken due note of your reply. At this juncture, I would like to confirm if there are any other requests before we conclude on item number 5, and then moving to the last item on our public on the agenda of a public session before we move on to the private session. I cannot see any requests for the floor, so item number 5 stands closed. So item number 8 is the presentation, which I will do, of my report. Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Good morning, the colleagues and all those present here. It's a pleasure to give you the floor, sir, for your report. Thank you, Honorable Vice Chair. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the report that I have the honor to present to you is submitted in accordance with Rules 2564 of the Rules of Procedure of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, as well as Section 3 of the rules governing the establishment and functioning of the special mechanisms of the Commission. It covers activities carried out during the intercession period from May to October 24. The report comprises of 4 sections. The first section presents an overview of the situation regarding death penalty, extrajudicial summary or arbitrary executions, and enforced disappearances in Africa. The second section covers the activities carried out in my capacity as the chairperson of the working group on death penalty, as well as other special mechanisms. The third section relates to activities carried out in my capacity as commissioner and country rapporteur. And finally, section 4 is devoted to the conclusions and the recommendations. With respect to the first section, with respect to the situation of the death penalty, during the period under review, the situation regarding the death penalty in Africa remained unchanged. In effect, out of the 54 state parties to the Charter, 26 have abolished the death penalty for all crimes. 3 have done so for ordinary crimes, while 17 other states maintain a moratorium on executions. Through these figures, we note that the African continent is following a predominantly abolitionist trend. Indeed, the bulk of African states have now abolished the death penalty in law or in practice. This means that executions are rare, except in a very small minority of states. However, it is important to underscore that the most important challenges have related to the application of the death penalty for infringements that are not serious crimes and which are applied in violation of the norms relating to the right to life. Furthermore, for several years now, several states have established moratoriums on death penalty, in so doing marking a suspension often seen as a start towards its definitive abolition. These moratoria remain fragile. In some countries, attempts to challenge them have emerged, driven by populist or security-focused political rhetoric. In the face of rising crime, terrorism, or social crisis, some leaders underscore the need to restore exemplary and deterrent justice to justify the end to moratorium. These calls reflect a persistent tension between the to uphold universal human rights of the public opinions, which is sometimes in favor in capital executions. Thus, the death penalty, far from being a set, continues to reveal the contradictions of collective emotions, democratic principles. In that regard, I would like to underscore that the concerns we expressed in our previous reports about the consequences of lifting on the execution of death penalty RC remain unchanged. Number of death sentences in this country remains very high to date. The working group on my behalf would like to reiterate our call for a return to policy of maintaining the moratorium on execution of the death penalty, which had been in force in the country at the DRC since 2003. Now, generally speaking, in fulfilling its mandate to protect the right to life, The working group remains firmly committed with all state parties and continues to advocate that states which see retain the death penalty to consider establishing or strengthening strict moratoria on executions and to take steps to commute existing death sentences. With respect to the states that have chosen to retain the death penalty in their legislation, we recall that through its general comment number 3 on the right to life, the Commission clearly stipulated that the death penalty should be imposed only for the most serious crimes. Now, by way of information, with respect to the study initiated by the Death Penalty Commission, I would like to note that since November 2011, the Commission adopted a study on the situation of the death penalty in Africa. This reference document has in some respects become outdated and requires updating to reflect developments and address new issues that have emerged since its adoption. Accordingly, the Commission, some years now, decided to undertake its review. The work initiated to that effect in collaboration with the Center for Human Rights of the University of Pretoria is currently being finalized. On 3rd July 2025, the working group under my leadership held a consultative meeting on the second draft of the study. We intend to finalize the draft study before the end of this year. In that regard, our working group remains open to receive contributions from the various stakeholders in order to further broaden the perspectives and information contained in the said documents. Now, I would like to share with you information relating to the draft protocol of the African Charter on the abolition of the death penalty. Efforts undertaken to achieve a consensual convergence around the draft protocol continue to receive favorable responses from several states. This is further reinforced by the considerable support provided by the Pan-African Parliament, which through a resolution of 5 July 2024 expressed its commitment to work with the Commission as well as all the other stakeholders to facilitate the adoption of the draft protocol by the policy organs of the African Union. We are still waiting for its inclusion on the agenda of the STC on Justice and Legal Affairs, and we seize this opportunity to call upon the state parties to the African Charter to support this prompt adoption of the draft instrument. Now, let me move on to enforced disappearances. This is a central concern when it comes to the implementation of the mandate for promotion and protection of rights. Out of the 54 African countries, 21 have ratified or acceded to the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearances. We urge those states that have not yet ratified this convention to do so with a view to better protecting the civil population against enforced disappearances. Let me remind you that the opportunities presented by the consideration of periodic reports are used to encourage state parties to adopt specific legislation for the prevention and punishment of the crime of enforced disappearances. We note with deep concern that numerous reports with respect to enforced disappearances have been received during the period under review. The multi-report of the UN Multidimensional Integrated Stabilization Mission, MINUSCA, indicate that 49 individuals were victims of adoption in June 2025. In Burkina Faso, 3 human rights defenders, namely Maudou Sawadogo, also known as Leche, Mifail Usman, and 2 other members of the Ballet Citoyen, disappeared respectively on 21 and 30th of March 2025, as well as Bukari Sidibe, who was abducted 1st of April 2025 and remains missing to date. We also received information that 5 members who had been abducted between 18 and 25 March 2025, namely journalist Idrissa Bari, Anselmel Sawadogo, Richard Olga, Judith Tiendre Bego, are still missing. However, reports received have indicated that journalist James Yazid Dembele, Khalifa Rasere, Luke Pakdegolmi, and Bakari Woba reappeared and were united with their families in July 2025. According to information received, they have been abducted and subsequently conscripted into the army. In the Republic of Guinea, Momodou Bilo Ba and Fonike Menge have not been seen since 9th of July 2024. The urgent letter of appeal we sent to the Guinean authorities requesting for impartial and credible investigations into their disappearance has not yet elicited an official reply. Let me add that journalist Abin Marwan Kamara has also been reported missing since 3rd December 2014, and the authorities have given no news according to the situation. Now, without taking a position on the veracity of the alleged cases, the working group remains seized of these reported cases and reiterates its call government to conduct impartial investigation to determine the cause. We call upon the governments of the concerned state to respect at all times the rights of refugees and human rights defenders, and to ensure a conducive environment to their legitimate work in the production and protection of rights, and to put an end to all forms of pressure. Extrajudicial killings. The working group notes with concern that allegations of extrajudicial executions were reported during the period under review in Burkina Faso, Sudan, Central African Republic, in Tanzania, and Burundi. Now, for the details, we would recommend you to look at the report to be published on our internet site. Let me remind you here that we also initiated a study on extrajudicial executions with the collaboration of Institute of Human Rights and Peace of Sheikh Anta Diop University in Dakar. Actually, a meeting was convened to that effect in November 2024. In accordance with Resolution 622, arrangements have been made to finalize the draft study during the first quarter of 2026. Now, let me come to my activities undertaken in my capacity as Commissioner and Chairperson of the Working Group. I participated in the 83rd Ordinary Session held in Banjul from 2nd to 22nd May, and the 84th online session held virtually from 21 to 38 July, and during which our Commission adopted several documents, considered reports, and rendered decisions on various communications. I also drafted a letter of appeal and press communique. But time is not on our side. So for urgent letters of appeal, on 12th of May 2025, I co-signed a letter to His Excellency Tamilu Gulis Hassan following allegations of violations of human rights during the pre-electoral period, to talk about the 4 disappearances of Mr. Paluka Dunde Yangali, a Tanzanian human rights militant and who was kidnapped in Maya. On 15 September 2025, I co-signed an urgent letter to His Excellency João Lourenço, President of the Republic of Angola, concerning the use of force killings during the demonstration of July 2025. Among other requests, we call on the government of Angola to conduct an investigation into the killings and injuries that occurred during the demonstration, with particular attention to the allegations of extrajudicial executions. On 3rd of October 2025, I co-signed an urgent appeal of letter addressed to His Excellency Marshal Mohamed Idris Deby, President of the Republic of Chad, concerning the revocation of the nationality of Mr. Sharfudin Galma Saleh and Gebla Makara, activists and human rights defenders in Chad. Among other requests, we urge the government of Chad to suspend any measure that could result in the statelessness of these 2 activities. On 10 October 2025, I signed an urgent appeal letter to His Excellency Faustin Archange Touadéra, President of the Republic of Central Africa, concerning the death of Mr. Giamba Ordan while in detention at the Lanja Mboko Gendarmerie in Bangui. Among other requests, we call for prompt, impartial, and independent investigation. 14th of October 2025, co-signed an appeal letter to His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, President of the Republic of Rwanda, concerning the adoption on 1st October 2025 of Mr. Bob Njagi, Mr. Nicola Oyo, two human rights defenders in Kampala, Uganda, by masked, uniformed, and armed men. The abduction of these two activities appears to be linked to their involvement in a publicity campaign in support of an political opponent, according to information we received. We regret that to date, our communications have not elicited any official response from the authorities concerned. We also regret the absence of any response to the urgent letter of appeal addressed to the authorities of DRC on 18 November 2024 following the allegations of enforced disappearances of Jacques Sinzaira, Kluwer Sasita, two human rights defenders. The urgent letter of appeal addressed to the President Idriss Déby, President of the Republic of Chad, following allegations of executions, arbitrary arrests in Ramamnai on 14 January 2025 has likewise not been responded to. In the same applies to the urgent letter of appeal addressed to His Excellency General Assimi Goïta, President of the Transition of the Republic of Mali, concerning inter alia other cases of enforced disappearances with respect to Mr. Dauda Mangasa. But then this letter was not reacted to on the part of the government. We also prepared another letter to His Excellency Captain Ibrahim Traoré, President of Transition of Burkina Faso, on 14 March 2025, following the massacre of hundreds of civilians in the neighborhoods of Solenso on 10 and 11 March 2025. So far, these letters have not elicited any response. With respect to letters of concern, on 17 October 2025, I sent a letter of concern to Guinea regarding the abduction of 26 September 2025 by the Guinean security forces of Mr. Elaji Adama Keita. In reprisal, it would appear, for the activities of his son, journalist Mamadou Bouabila Keita, who today is in exile. We urge the government of Guinea to ensure that Mr. Elhaj Adama Keita be allowed contact with his family and to be guaranteed an independent and impartial judicial process. On the same day, I sent a letter of concern to government of Burkina Faso regarding the disappearance between 10 to 13 October 2025 of magistrates and lawyers. On the same day, I co-signed another letter of concern, this time addressed to Mozambique, regarding allegations of extrajudicial executions and enforced disappearances attributed to the defense and security forces against individuals attempting to leave the city of Musimbo for security reasons. We call on the authorities to investigate the allegations and to bring the perpetrators to justice. I also published press releases. On 12 June 2025, I co-issued a press release condemning the death in detention of Albert Monyungo Ojwang, Republic of Kenya. We call on the government of Kenya to establish an independent judicial commission of inquiry on the dead, Mr. Albert Omunde. For the other press releases, because of time, I would just ask you to look at the report which would be published. Now I come to my activities in my capacity as country rapporteur.
This Burkina Faso continues to face security challenges despite efforts made by the Burkina Bay authorities to protect the civilian population. Terrorist attacks continue to disrupt daily life in the affected areas, causing numerous casualties and significant material damage. During the period covered by this report, terrorist attacks were carried out in numerous localities across the country. First, several dozen soldiers and civilians were killed on 11 May 2025 in a jihadist attack in Djibo, targeting the military detachment, police stations, and gendarmerie posts. Reports also indicate attacks on Fulani villages by government forces and members of the volunteers for the defense of the homeland. In this regard, we know that the exact circumstances of the massacre of civilians between 2004 and 2025, particularly in the localities of Basalogo and Solenzo, have not yet been clarified. we are with the findings of the investigations announced by the government of Burkina Faso following these tragic events. The Commission remains seized of the situation with the hope that appropriate measures taken by the authorities of the country will help shed light on these grave events and ensure better protection of civilians who are also exposed to abuses by terrorist groups. With regard to the Republic of Guinea went through an unconstitutional change of government on 5 September 2021. A referendum on the constitution boycotted by the opposition was held on 21 September 2025. According to the Minister of Territorial Administration and Decentralization, the new draft constitution was approved by 89% of voters, with a turnout of 86.42%. Presidential elections, we call for inclusive, credible, and transparent elections to ensure a return to constitutional order. These elections are scheduled for 28 December 2025. Still as concerned Guinea, during the period under review, restrictions on freedom of expression and assembly continued, with 5 media outlets under suspension, while access restrictions to social networks and the jamming of private radio stations have been observed since November 2024. On 22nd August 2025, the Guinean authorities suspended the activities of 3 political parties for 90 days, including the organization of meetings, demonstrations, or propaganda campaigns. This decision came 5 months after the suspension of 28 political parties. Information received also indicates the systematic prohibition of demonstrations organized by the opposition and civil society since 13 May 2022, as well as the repression of unauthorized demonstrations resulting in the death of at least 59 protesters since 2022, including 20 in 2024. We state that freedom of expression is essential to the exercise of all the human rights and constitutes a hallmark of pluralist democracy, enabling development and diversity. We reiterate the concern expressed in the urgent appeal letters addressed to the transitional authorities following the alarming disappearance of Mamadou Bilo Ba and Fonike Menge in July 2024. For the Central African Republic, 6 years after the political agreement between the government and armed groups, the armed conflict continues in certain parts of the country, resulting in human rights violations. During the second quarter of 2025, the United Nations MONUSCO documented 790 human rights violations, abuses, and breaches of international humanitarian law affecting 1,162 civilian victims. Regional and local elections that were initially scheduled for October 2025 were postponed to 6 April 2025 and then to August 2025. The government recently announced that municipal, legislative, and presidential elections will be held on 28 December 2025. The postponement is reportedly due to security constraints, the need to mobilize the financial resources, bearing in mind the importance of these elections and the ongoing process of institutions. We call on the stakeholders to support the common fund established to finance the electoral process. As regards Chad, on 3 October 2025, the Chadian Parliament, dominated by the Patriotic Salvation Movement, the ruling party, amended the country's new constitution, which had been adopted by referendum in December 2023. The constitutional law was promulgated by the Chadian president on 8 October. The amendment introduced a 7-year presidential term and removed the limit on the number of presidential mandates. It also extended the term of office of members of parliament from 5 to 6. In May of 2012, violence that erupted in Manego, a sub-prefecture in Benue in the province of Logon, between herders and local residents resulted in at least 41 deaths, the majority of whom were children. The clashes are reportedly linked to a grazing area that has been gradually converted into farmland by local communities, a situation not well received by herders who fear the disappearance of grazing spaces for their livestock. Investigations have been opened, and the public prosecutor at the High Court of Mondo stated that more than 80 individuals identified as perpetrators and co-perpetrators or accomplices are currently in detention for the purpose of the investigation. As regards the Comoros, the report of the first promotion mission carried out in the country from 16 to 20 September 2024 was transmitted to the Comoran government on 17 March for any comments prior to its publication. Upon expiry of the 60-day period for the country to submit its observations, the report was published on the Commission's website. We reiterate our call on the national authorities to promptly fulfill their commitment to submit the initial report of the Union of the Comoros in accordance with the obligations arising under Article 2062 of the African Charter. In conclusion, the Commission continues to engage with member states, organs of the African Union, and partners, including civil society and the economic community. In collaboration with these partners, it will continue to promote the adoption of the draft protocol to the Charter on the abolition of the death penalty, contribute to building a knowledge base through studies, and engage in advocacy and political dialogue on the issue of the death penalty, as well as on extrajudicial judicial summary or arbitrary execution and enforced disappearances in Africa. The Commission has already adopted guidelines on enforced disappearances in Africa, which intends to continue disseminating. In the same vein, a revised study on the death penalty and a study on extrajudicial summary or arbitrary executions are underway with the aim of providing stakeholders and decision makers with a tool for advocacy. To sustain this momentum, the working group makes the following recommendations to state parties. In such way, the death penalty still exists. Observe a moratorium on the application of a death penalty in accordance with Resolution 4299. So suspend the execution of prisoners sentenced to death and commit their sentences to lesser penalties. Support and participate in efforts aimed at the adoption of the draft protocol to the African Charter on the abolition of the death penalty. To take measures to ensure the dissemination and the effective implementation of the guidelines for the protection of all persons and from enforced disappearance in Africa and other applicable instruments aimed at guaranteeing the full protection of the right to life. To the African Union, we request that to promote consultations with member states, regional organizations, and mechanisms for the abolition of the death penalty. We also request the African to monitor and support the process for the adoption and the draft protocol to the Charter on the death penalty, to continue to support the Central African Republic in its effort to restore security throughout the national territory, to the national human rights institutions and civil society organizations, to intensify national level advocacy for the abolition of the death penalty, as well as for the prevention and response to extrajudicial summary or arbitrary executions and enforced disappearances in Africa. Also to inform the working group of any violations of the right to life. To development partners, we request that they provide support to the working group to enable the latter to effectively implement its mandate. Also to provide technical and financial support to state parties, NHRIs, and CSOs in their activities, programs, and projects and policies aimed at combating extrajudicial summary or arbitrary executions and enforced disappearance, as well as in criminal justice reform processes aimed at abolishing the death penalty. And finally, to the civil society organizations, we request them to continue their advocacy for the abolition of the death penalty in Africa, to collect, verify, and regularly publish reliable data on cases of extrajudicial summary or arbitrary executions, as well as on enforced disappearance. We also request them to develop strategies and action plans to raise public awareness in Africa about the death penalty, extrajudicial summary or arbitrary executions, and enforced disappearances across the continent. That is, Honorable Chairperson, I'm done with the presentation of this report, and I return the floor to you. Thank you. Thank you very much for that report. I have on the list two speakers of the non-governmental organizations. Before I give them the floor, I'll look at the hall. I can already see Kenya. I'll look in the hall to see if there are speakers. Yes, the Madam Representative of Kenya, the floor is yours.
The Government of Kenya congratulates the chairperson of the Working Group of the Death Penalty and Extrajudicial Summary Arbitrary Killings and Enforced Disappearances in Africa for the comprehensive report presented in this session. Kenya appreciates the continued engagement of the Working Group in promoting accountability and the protection of the rights to life across the continent. Building on this shared commitment to protecting life, Kenya has taken significant steps to align its domestic legal framework with regional and international human rights standards. On the issue of death penalty, Kenya remains a de facto abolitionist state, having maintained a moratorium on execution since 1987. Momentum towards full abolition has continued to build following the Supreme Court's landmark decision in Francis Mruatetu and others versus the Republic of Kenya in 2017, which declared the mandatory death sentence unconstitutional. In line with this jurisprudence, the Penal Code Amendment Bill 2023, which proposes replacing the death penalty with life imprisonment, was adopted by the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee and now awaits debate in Parliament. Further, affirming this direction in December of 2024, Kenya voted in favor of the United Nations General Assembly's 10th resolution calling for a global moratorium on executions, reflecting a sustained shift towards a more humane and rehabilitative criminal justice system. On the case of Albert Ojwang, this delegation notes that prompt investigation and prosecutions were instituted and the cases presented before court. Those cases are ongoing. Finally, Kenya has taken concrete steps to address enforced disappearances and extrajudicial killings. The Attorney General in September of 2023 established a multi-agency committee on legislative policy and institutional framework for the protection of persons from extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearances. The committee represents key justice sector, security, and oversight institutions and is tasked with developing comprehensive domestic legislation to criminalize enforced disappearances and establish mechanisms for prevention, investigation, prosecution, and victim support. I submit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam, for your intervention. We have taken due note. I can't see any member state requesting the floor, so I now go to the NGO. On the list, we have Afiakat, the observer role number 40. Afiakat, I don't see them in the hall. So, OMCT, United Nations Organization Against Torture, UNOCT. Are they not in the hall? Are they here? We have exhausted the list of speakers on item 8. On the report of the chairperson of the commission. So I'll bring that item to a close, and I'm going to cede back the floor to the chairperson for the closure of this public session. Thank you very much, Honorable Vice Chairperson. Before I bring this public session to a close, I'd like to thank the Republic of Kenya. We have taken due note of the issue on the abolition of the death penalty, and that it is in the state Kenyan constitution. We also like to say that very regularly the Republic of Kenya votes positively for the United Nations resolution calling for a moratorium on the death penalty. We also appreciate your availability to continue to collaborate with our working group for better protection of the right to life. Having said this, Honorable Chairperson, we have exhausted all the items on the agenda of the public session. At this junction, if we don't have any announcement, we are going to suspend the public session. The commission will withdraw into private session to consider some documents. We'll resume our deliberations tomorrow with the closing ceremony from 10 a.m. I have just learned. So have a good afternoon, everyone. We are adjourned to tomorrow. That is the public session.